This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Released on Sunday, June 26, 2016.
This Agile Life, episode 110.
Silver Searcher.
The software industry transforms more and more every day. Agile methods are quickly replacing traditional ones. The question is, are you agile enough? This podcast is devoted to agile and lean software development. Time to welcome your agile coaches on This Agile Life.
Hello, everyone. I'm the host of This Agile Life, John Sextro. Joining me this episode, we have Craig Buchek.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Craig, how are you?
Doing pretty good. Also with us, Craig, we have Lee McCauley.
Hey, I am glad to be around all you weirdos.
We are weird indeed. But we're glad you're here with us too, Lee, to be a weirdo right alongside us. The last weirdo of this episode is the one and only weirdo himself, Amos King.
Probably the biggest weirdo out of all of us. I really missed you guys. I'm so glad that we could get on here tonight. I know it's been a while in both having a podcast come out and in us just getting together.
And being awesome together and weird.
That's right.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. Tonight, we're going to talk about problems with your product owner. That never happens. What?
No.
People don't have problems with a product owner. People don't. Problems
people don't
with
have
product
people.
Owners. Product owner, problem people.
I'm not sure I've actually had a product owner until recently.
Well, you're lucky. There you go.
Well, we've had people with a title of product owner.
Problem
they haven't
solved.
really been product owners.
They didn't product own.
Well,
They did not own.
This issue was suggested to us by our friend Kevin Thiels, and he wanted us to knock this idea around a little bit and see if we could propose some solutions. So he's hypothetically might be working with a product owner that it isn't too terribly engaged. So maybe the dev team is already sort of doing a good job, but from an agile perspective, but the product owner just won't engage, doesn't understand the role of a product owner, maybe kind of sounds like. And so what sort of suggestions could we give for him, Craig?
Well, first of all, what is the role of a project manager? We should discuss.
Not a project manager.
A product owner.
A product owner. What should he be doing or she be doing?
Owning the product. Oh, wait, you can't use the words in the definition.
So what is this, a game of taboo?
Right.
So there's actually a great video called Agile Project Ownership in a Nutshell. I think we've all mentioned this video before. I think it's about 16 minutes. Worth watching if you want a better understanding of this.
Should definitely put it in the show notes.
Yeah, but in a nutshell, the product owner represents the needs and desires of the users of the software.
More specifically, the product owner is the one that's in charge of deciding on priorities, at least at the feature level, and which things get done first, and knowing the vision of where the product is going over the long term.
Yeah, I was going to say, and possibly like a domain expert or at least a representative of a domain expert. They don't have to know everything, but they should have quite a few of the answers for anything that you have to ask, or at least know where to go to get them.
So asking like, how should this work specifically?
Yeah, possibly. I think there are a lot of questions that go into domain expert out of just how should it work, but like, what does this mean? Nomenclatures, just different things like that.
It's also the product owner's responsibility to make sure that the team has a sufficient backlog of stories ready to be worked at any time, so that the team is never waiting on new priorities to come out and new things to do.
So you guys are giving a pretty comprehensive set of roles and responsibilities, or at least responsibilities and things that a product owner can do to help the team. And maybe if some of those things are explained to this individual who is serving as the product owner, to this group of engineers, software developers, that would help clarify for the product owner why it's important to have them around more often.
I think that's a really good point, John, because I think I mentioned earlier that until recently, I don't think I've ever actually had somebody that's in the product owner role that's really been doing a good job of being a product owner. And I think in every case, it's because they didn't really understand what the product owner role is entailed.
But Lee, you can always shoot me an email. I'll get back to you. I'll be your product owner.
Sure, that'll work. Except that we need an answer like now. In a lot of cases.
Why?
Well, it's about efficiency, right? Otherwise, we've got a story that's blocked because we can't move forward until we have information, or we don't have any stories.
I've prioritized a bunch of stories for you. You can just move on to something else until I get back to you. It's okay. You got plenty to do. I got plenty to do too. I don't need to sit in the pit all day.
Right. So that still means that we've got a lot of stories sitting, getting blocked, right? And it'll pretty much be almost every story is going to have some kind of questions. Sometimes we can answer those as a team, but in a lot of cases, we need a product owner or a subject matter expert that we can go to that has those answers. And not only that, but it is only the product owner's responsibility. The product owner is the only person that has the right to actually move stories at a feature level, at least for us, at the featured level, to say that those stories are actually done, and to say that they're actually ready to be worked, that we have understood the feature well enough to actually start working on it, or to break it down.
So they probably set the acceptance criteria, and then they confirm whether the acceptance criteria have been met.
Right. So
I find that this is probably the thing that most Agile teams struggle with the most, and it's the principle of business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. So you are actually supposed to be with actual users, not just a product owner representing them. But even if we have just a product owner representing them, even that is not going very well.
Okay, so it sounds like some of the things that we're saying here is that we need a product owner to be easy to contact, and easiest to contact would be inside of the working area with us, right? Co-location of a product owner nearby the team to help unblock things, to help answer questions. But Craig, you're starting to go, I think, a little bit deeper into some more advanced product ownership concepts, such as interacting with users, performing feature experiments, or finding out what users really want, as opposed to just acting on their own gut.
So, I mean, a lot of one of the things that Agile says is that people should be co-located in the same room to facilitate as much communication as possible. And a lot of times when I'm working, I'm making a form and I need to know, this field here, what should be the range? Should it be from 1 to 100, or should it be 0 to 99? I'm not really sure. And having that product owner be that person that makes that decision and be in the room or very easily accessible is what you really want there, so that I don't sit there struggling for 45 minutes on some little piddly little thing that should take about 2 minutes to ask and have answered.
I think a lot of the problem there is that no matter how much work you put into a story or even a waterfall document, like if you're doing waterfall, it's good to have a product owner around also, is because no matter how much work you put into there, there's going to be some level of ambiguity or a failure to communicate. Maybe you wrote it in there, but you didn't write it in a way that the person that is implementing it is understanding.
I have seen ambiguity. If it's ambiguous, then it doesn't matter how you solve it, right? Well, is that really true or not? if you did waterfall, it should have been specified, or it didn't matter.
In
real life.
Well, I was just thinking of it whenever you were talking about should it be 0 to 100 or 1 to 99, and that can come up that maybe you've done quite a few stories for them, and they said 0 to 100 inclusively, and this time they just didn't say inclusively. They said between 0 and 100, and we're nitpicking here, and this might be like a very trivial example, but those are the kind of things that I think come up a lot and are ambiguous in stories.
So what happens often is if you don't get that question answered pretty quick, then most developers will simply make the decision themselves. And while in a lot of cases, maybe they can make the right decision, maybe they won't. And it might not even get caught until much later down the line, and then fixing that is way more expensive.
What I found with the developers making the decision too is that the developers end up making the right decision more often when the product owner has been involved and very involved. If the product owner spends all of their time in the war room for 6 months with the team on a 2-year project, after 6 months, they have a lot less questions for that product owner because they've learned so much from them. And when that product owner is in another room and is less accessible, even if they feel like the communication is pretty open, that time between asking and actually getting an answer causes people to ask less questions because I know I'm going to have to wait 2 hours. So like in Craig's case, maybe I come in instead of saying, should it be 1 to 99 or 0 to 100? Instead, I say, hey, should it include 0 or 1? And it takes an hour. And they come back and say, oh, yeah, it's not supposed to include 0. And then I get to the 9900 side and I don't ask because I've already waited 2 hours for the other one. So I just choose. So that quick feedback and lessons learned amongst the team and everybody around knowing it makes a big difference. And when I say room, a hangout, even a Slack channel to a point, but not near as good as that. If you have a remote team, those things can count as your room, as long as people are actually super involved in that room.
So we've said a lot of things about reasons why we should have product owners in the room and the importance of it and the benefits of doing that. But how do we now, to help the listeners out and to help this product owner out, what things can we do to convince the product owner that it is worth his time, her time, to be in the area, to be co-located with the team throughout the development process? How do we go about making that clear to the product owner?
So I worked with a team and I asked them to, whenever they had to ask the product owner a question, to track the time from question to answer. And then also if there were follow-up questions based on that answer, to track that time and number of follow-up questions. And they actually marked it when the product owner was like when they were in a meeting with him, or he was in the room, and then when he was away and what the difference was. And then we just took that down to dollars and cents on if I sat there, even if I went to work on something else. We said if you went to work on something else, then it was just half that dollars and cents because you're still thinking about the other thing that you're waiting on and you're going back and checking all the time. So we said, yeah, let's say 50%. It costs 50% of your time whenever you're waiting on something, even if you decide to work on something else in the meantime.
So you're suggesting to demonstrate the money that is saved or the efficiency that is gained.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any suggestions for how to convince the product owner to be more present?
Basically, the developers need them. They need them. They need access to them. They need to have these questions answered, or they're going to spin their wheels.
Right, but how do we convince? What can we do to help convince the organization, or convince the product owner's boss, or to convince the product owner themselves that it's important to be there.
So one of the other things is that I've tried is just try it. Like say, hey, product owner, can we try this for 2 weeks or a certain amount of time, but be like very dogmatic about it. Like, hey, be here 7 out of the 8 hours of the day in with the team and be available to them, and then track how many features or stories get returned at the product owner level. Hey, no, that's wrong. Or, yeah, I accept that. Like how many things get accepted first try versus how many things get accepted second, third try. And then get them to focus on that for a short period of time.
One of the things that I would want to do is have a frank and open conversation with the individual to find out what's going on. What is it about what we're doing that is not attractive or appealing to the product owner, is not attractive or appealing enough to the product owner to make them want to spend more time with us in the act and the partnership of creating the software. I personally can't think of a more valuable member of the team from a moving forward perspective and understanding what needs to be done perspective than the product owner. And if the product owner has a shared vested interest in the success of the project, you would think that they would do everything in their power to be as available as possible to the team. And so one of the things that drives me to think about is this individual actually invested in what we're doing, or as maybe is the case here, this person has simply been told, you are the product owner, whether you like it or not. That means you do this, and that means you spend time with these developers. Maybe this person has like a second job that they're doing at the same time.
They're product owner on 2 projects.
Or an ops manager, or, a salesperson, who knows, right? But they've got seems like they've got some other thing within the organization that they're responsible for. So I'd want to have that conversation to find out, why don't you want to be here with us? What's more important to you than this?
And how much of, if you do have multiple jobs, how much of that job could you do while you're sitting here?
I think that's an important question.
A lot of times you don't need a separate office to answer some emails.
Also, the product owner is sort of a leadership role. If you're not setting a good example, if you're not leading, then the team is just going to be sort of scattered, and it's not going to function very well. So if you're not there, if you're not available, if you're not leading, then the team isn't going to function as well as it should.
I almost look at a product owner kind of like a team captain, right? On like a high school basketball team, right? The team captain still needs to be there, needs to be a part of the team. One way that I have found that worked really well to get a product owner, we had a very uninvolved product owner, was the team started like doing hangout things, like going bowling and stuff like that. And we found out what the product owner liked to do. And then we would pick those things to do and invite them to be along. And after they were emotionally involved with the team, it was really easy to say, hey, we need you to hang out in this area, because that person also found friendships on that team. And when they weren't just answering questions about the product, they might like stop and talk to you about, hey, last week we were playing darts, and this week on my dart league, and they start talking to you. So you found out they like darts, so you took them out to do darts, and now they have those conversations with people on the team. And that brings them to stay in the area more.
Lee, it sounded like you have a unique experience, having not a lot of opportunity and experiences to have a product owner, and then more recently having a product owner. What do you think about ways to convince the product owner to be more present?
I don't know. I thought Amos's suggestions were pretty good.
I love you, Lee.
I can't think of how you convince somebody that their priorities should be different, because most of the product owners, if they've been, so here are the two different brands of product owners that I've had experience with. Ones that have been assigned to that job and they're really product owner proxies. They're not the real product owners. They've just been given that title, and they are trying to do some of the administrative stuff that a product owner normally has to do, but they don't really have the knowledge to be able to make those real decisions about how the product is going to get steered. Or you have someone that actually is in the business and has the knowledge to be the product owner, but they're working 60-hour weeks and doing way more in the company than just your product, and it's kind of a side thing for them. They're trying to do their best from what they can consider their best, and your project is just one of 10 things on their plate. So those are the things that I've had recently. For example, probably the one product owner I feel like has actually done the job. Part of the reason why she's so good is, she is actually working 60 hours a week, and therefore a lot of those hours end up getting spent with the team. And she's got another BA that has literally been on her hip practically for the last 25 years. And so they are almost one person. And so we actually have two people that can answer those questions, not just one.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And and then we've still got a product owner proxy that does the ministerial stuff of organizing meetings and making sure that features are being discussed and that stories are being broken down and stuff like that, while allowing the real product owner to still have control and make the decisions on features and when they're going to get what the priorities are, and doing all the high responsibility stuff. So it's really a team effort to be a product owner, but it works really well. And I have never seen one person that's been able to take on that role and do it adequately.
Well, you mentioned adequately there, which would lead me to believe that you believe that this product owner is being effective. What are some ways that maybe we could go about measuring the effectiveness of a product owner? And the reason that I bring this question up and propose that we talk about this a little bit because I feel like if you could come up with some measurements around and regarding the effectiveness of a product owner, then a group of developers could use these measurements of effectiveness to track a product owner that is maybe not as engaged as they'd like them to be, and try and correlate that back to, when the product owner is more present, we're more productive, and things along those lines, using that as ammunition to talk to the product owner about, hey, look, when you're around, things go better, things go smoother, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, the only one that I can think of is, and it's only a very small piece of what a PO does, is if you could measure any times when the team has to say, hey, we don't have groomed stories ready to work yet, and therefore we're going to have to call a meeting just to do that, rather than having those not breaking up the flow by doing that. If you can measure that, if you can measure how often stories get past that groomed state and get into being developed, but they haven't really been groomed, and they really don't have clear acceptance criteria, that's another measure of saying, well, that's not really the product owner is missing something there. Although to be fair, that's not just the product owner; that's also the team allowing that story to be considered ready.
I'm going to guess that this is going to be a little bit hard to measure because it's going to be one of those things you're not going to realize. It's like when I talk about pairing and you get stuck and you don't realize you're stuck. That's hard to measure that time that you're stuck because you didn't realize it. I think you're going to run into situations where you have a question that ideally would be answered by the product owner, and you sit there and spin for a while, but you don't realize how much time you're spending waiting for that answer or trying to come up with that answer on your own. So I think it's going to be pretty hard to measure. But Lee's got probably the best ideas I've heard on how to measure those things.
What if you kept in addition to what Lee mentioned, and I think what Lee was mentioning was the times when you run out of stories prepared and groomed to be worked on. So that could be one measure. What if you also tracked the number of times that a story became blocked because the product owner wasn't available to have a conversation about the story?
I think most of those blockages are micro blockages, though. They're pretty small, but, they're half an hour at a time, maybe. And that's not something you normally block on your Kanban board.
It depends, though. In some cases, depending on how the team is working, they may not see their product owner or talk to him until stand-up the next day, right?
Sure, and you could also maybe track the number of hours or the number of days or half days or something that the product owner was present and available. And I'm not saying that any of these things necessarily in and of themselves equate to efficiency or effectiveness. But what I'm proposing is that maybe you correlate those back to other metrics like cycle time and see if there are any conclusions that can be drawn from them. Like maybe you notice that your cycle time is lower when the product owner has been present more often. And then you can use that as a catalyst for a conversation to say, hey, we've noticed over the past 3 increments, over the past 3 weeks or whatever it is, that on the weeks where you've been here more, our cycle time is lower. So we propose that in order to try and keep our cycle time low, that you as the product owner be present here with us more often.
You might try a cycle time for questions. So if any developer has a question, track that time between has the question and gets the question answered.
And I think that these are really important things that you can get them in there with what you're talking about. You're talking about collecting these metrics, either make them feel involved with the extra activities to make them feel like they're part of the team, or make them feel really important with things like metrics. I mean, really, you're social engineering your way into a great product owner.
Well, that's what I was talking earlier about, making them feel needed.
If you listen to more than a few of our more than 100 episodes, you know that we don't often read commercials on the show, and this episode is no different. But I would like to take a moment to thank all of our supporters that joined our private Slack channel. On our private Slack channel, the hosts of This Agile Life talk with our supporters about our daily challenges as we continue living our agile lives. In this episode, I'd also like to personally thank Carl Blanchard. Carl started supporting the show back in April 2016. Carl, thank you for your support. We feel honored that you listen to the show. If you want to join Carl in our private Slack channel, go to thisagilelife.com/community. Now, how about if, despite all your best efforts, the product owner is completely uninterested because this isn't this person's primary job. This isn't what this individual has been told is their primary responsibility, and then therefore is not the thing that they're being measured on and judged on and incented on for their end of year evaluation, etc. Right? So they're kind of stuck with this responsibility that they don't want. What are some things that you could do to, I guess, circumvent or work around the fact of having an absentee product owner?
Usually I find the teams go one of two ways. One is they just are not a very well functioning team, or someone else picks up some of that slack and fills some of that role. and it's pretty organic how they fill the role. It's not. I'm not sure I can even really think off the top of my head how they would go about filling that role.
So the stuff that I've seen in the past for teams has been, you will have somebody that'll step up and start organizing, story breakdown meetings and stuff like that. But then maybe you can get a weekly demo, and then in those demos or the sprint planning meetings, that's when you get your time with the customer / product owner, and hopefully they can make some decisions as far as what features you do next or what stories you do next. And so that can help a little bit, but it's a very small kind of Band-Aid.
You end up in a situation you do the best you can with what you've got. It's what happens to the team. Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't.
Do you think which is the worst of these outcomes, to build nothing or to build the wrong thing?
Am I spending the same amount of money?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And time?
I say building nothing.
Ooh. I think I'd rather build nothing because at least I can, find something else to do with my time. I'm going to be bored and probably looking for another job.
Oh, I disagree.
No? You don't get bored when you're not building anything?
I would rather build the wrong thing, because when you get the wrong thing in front of the right people, you get feedback so that you can make that thing right. And you
I was assuming that we weren't going to get that opportunity at all. Okay. If that's the case.
Well, I think once you put it out there and people use it, you start to find out if you're doing the right thing or not.
How long can you spend doing the wrong thing, though, before putting it in front of someone?
A long freaking time, but I feel a whole lot better doing that than sitting still. I think you're more likely to get feedback from building the wrong thing versus building nothing. Building nothing, I often find out that feedback comes like way later, whenever they're like, hey, where's this coming from? Because they just expect that it's taking you some time.
So what about this, guys? What if if you're in a situation where you have an absentee product owner, what if you focused on trying to do continuous deployment and being able to get it out in front of your customers all the time, and then completely bypass the product owner themselves?
I've done that.
Amen, Lee.
Does it work?
Yes.
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 Well, I think it works to make a great product. It does not work to make a happy product owner.
Well, what is the goal?
So, happy product owner. Product owner is very overloaded, I think, too, because sometimes product owner means, to some people, means the person that's paying you for the product. And sometimes it's a role on a team, right? And it gets very conflated. I don't know a better word for that. And so I have seen end users being really happy, and the people who ultimately are putting in their money really happy. But the people that are actively paying the bills, which were the actual product owners, they didn't work for the development company that was writing the software, but were part of the whole thing, were really pissed off because they got bypassed. Even though I think that they looked really good in the situation because it looked like they produced a great product.
I think if you're doing that continuous, I think it's unlikely to have a product owner that's not there, but for the team to, function well enough to be doing continuous deployments. If you have someone strong enough to push that, to push those continuous deployments, then he's probably also filling in for some of the project owner's role.
Yeah, but not necessarily the stuff like deciding on what things get built next. That becomes direct response from the customers, right? From the users.
You still have to weigh priorities, probably, from what the customer is telling you. So you're probably still doing some product owner role there in balancing those priorities.
Yeah, I suppose.
And deciding when the customer is wrong. That's actually a big part of a product owner is, the customer wants a faster horse. That's the product owner's like, no, we're going to build you a car instead.
Yeah. And that's that goes back to, again, the importance of having the product owner to help lay out the vision, the roadmap, the ultimate manifestation of the thing that is wanted, to help give direction, and then let the engineers and the developers do the important work of building a faster horse as manifest by a car, by an automobile, right? And without that vision, without the product, the eye towards the product and the product aesthetic, they might get something that is faster, but is not exactly what they were looking for. So I think we've given all of our listeners some good advice on working with their product owners. And does anybody have anything to wrap up with as final pointers for working with product owners? I talked about the video Agile Product Ownership in a Nutshell. I also found a couple other articles, 37 tasks for a product owner. Amos said that they have a lot of things on their plate. 37 seems like a lot of things for them to do. And I'll also post a link to what Scrum says about the product owner role. Anyone else? Final parting words?
The only thing I would add is don't get mad at your product owner. They may be doing a horrible job from your perspective, but that doesn't mean that the prime directive isn't still in force. So don't forget them.
Lee, do you want to repeat what the prime directive is?
Sure. Now, this is taken from prime directive for retrospectives, but I use it as a prime directive for our entire team every day, every moment, which is a paraphrasing. Assume that the people that came before you or the people on your team are all doing the best that they can do given the resources and the knowledge that they have, and go with that assumption. To me, this basically says, assume that they're doing the best job they can all the time, and just have some respect for other people. Same thing goes for your product owner.
I love it. My wife says the same thing. Everybody does the best they can with the information and knowledge they have at the time. And I say that's the only reason she's still married to me is because she assumes I'm doing the best I can.
Boy, if she only knew.
Yeah, I can't see any other good reason.
She doesn't have enough information.
She's doing the best she can, Craig. Best she can. I think that we've kind of killed this. I mean, the thing is, make them feel important, make them feel part of the team. And you make them feel important by showing them data, and you make them feel part of the team by being their friend and trusting them.
This week's hottest picks.
Lee, you're up first with your pick this episode. What do you have for us?
So the only pick I've got today is the Alzheimer's Association of St. Louis. This last weekend, I spent all of Saturday doing a hackathon, which was the first that the Alzheimer's Association in St. Louis, at least, had done. So we were hacking Alzheimer's and coming up with ideas of how technology can help Alzheimer's patients and caregivers and physicians and the association itself. And so there's a lot of good ideas, a lot of good stuff put together that day. And I think it's a really worthy cause. So for those of you who, a lot of people have been touched by the disease. So if you are wondering how to help, then check out the Alzheimer's Association. That's at www.alz.org.
Man, that's a great pick, Lee.
I saw a picture of you there, Lee.
Oh, wow.
At Launch Code.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do my pick next, and I've got two. My first one is something called Code Wars, codewars.com. So it's an interesting site because it encourages you to practice your trade as a software developer using a kata-based approach, and it allows you to track yourself through these katas, and it awards you points for completing certain katas that have been created by other members of the community. And I've been using it recently just to keep my software development tools sharp. You know, that old saying about spend 2 hours sharpening the axe and 1 cutting the tree down, or however that goes, Craig. I know you're good for that quote.
Yeah, I don't know the exact quote, but keep the saw blade sharp. And
yeah. So I've been trying to keep the saw blade sharpened, and I've been using codewars.com to do that. If that's something you're interested in, check that out. My last pick is more of a shout out or a call out, just to say that while I'm spending some time off between clients right now, I am working on a new t-shirt for This Agile Life. So look for the announcement of a new t-shirt. And if you would like to receive the announcement once the t-shirts are ready, please sure to go over to thisagilelife.com, and you'll receive a pop-up if you haven't done it before to join our mailing list. And then when those shirts are ready to be bought and sold, I will send out an announcement.
I'm signing up right now.
You're not
getting a shirt.
No, I'm not. I'm not on the list. I just close that pop-up every time it comes up.
Thanks, Amos.
No problem.
Way to set a good example.
But everybody else should probably sign up for it.
Yeah, I think so.
I get emails from John either way.
Okay, Craig, what are your picks for the episode?
All right, my first pick is an article called "Is Postgres NoSQL Better Than MongoDB?" And here's the secret: yes. So Postgres. So a lot of people are into NoSQL. I'm not, but if I do need to do it, I will actually use Postgres and get all the basic protections and the SQL goodies that Postgres gives me, and then I can add some NoSQL on top of it in the same database. And actually, Postgres is better at MongoDB than MongoDB is, performance-wise and reliability. My second pick is called a term called the software crisis, and I'll link to the Wikipedia article. And so the software crisis was basically a discussion about the difficulty of writing useful and efficient programs quickly. And they thought they were having problems mainly because the speed that computer hardware was advancing. So this sounds like a pretty recent thing, but actually this conversation started in 1968. So we've been worried about how well we're writing software for pretty much our entire industry's lifetime.
I was going to say, I haven't been alive that long, thank God.
Me neither.
Good picks, Craig. Thanks for those. I'll be sure to check those out myself. All right, Amos, what do you have for your picks this episode?
All right, so I think if you've listened long enough, you probably know that I am a fan of Vim.
What?
Yeah, and I like Emacs too. Just not a fan of like bigger IDEs.
Tabs or spaces?
Tabs and spaces. We'll fight about that later.
Tabs or spaces. I'm trying to start a fight right now, like on recent episodes of Silicon Valley.
I don't really care. Tabs or spaces doesn't bother me. If you use tabs, I'll set them so that they look like 2 spaces, just because it's easier on my eyes. I actually think that tabs are not a bad idea since people can choose how they want it to display. Anyway, moving on. There's ag.vim. So I used to use acvim for searching for things in Vim, and someone pointed me to ag.vim. Ag is the periodic symbol for silver, I believe. I didn't look that up, but I know it's called the Silver Searcher, so I think that it might be why it's called AG from top of my head. Yep. Thanks, Craig, for verifying. Did you just look it up, or you just remember?
No, I'm the one that introduced you to ACK and probably the Silver Searcher as well.
No, not the Silver Searcher. You did not. Okay. People I'm working with right now. We have a Vim Slack channel. But
Silver
anyway,
symbol is AG.
Yes, thank you. It has been pretty fantastic. I kept them both for a little bit, but forced all my search shortcuts to AG.vim, and it's so much quicker, and the actual output versus ActVim I like a lot better. And then my second choice, a long time ago, I picked some beer on the podcast a couple times, and someone told me I should have an adult beverage for every podcast. So tonight I went and picked up a few. I only drank one of them, and so I can't pick which one. But I will say that the one that I did drink is fantastic. It's called Hop Slam. It's from Comstock Brewery in Michigan. It's a double IPA that's brewed with honey, which gives it a nice warm texture to it, light. And it's got a lot of citrus, a whole lot of hops, and it's freaking fantastic. And I would like to drink 4 or 5 of them, but it's 10% alcohol, so I'll pass.
That's what I'm talking about. All right, well, that's all we have for this episode. Check out thisagilelife.com for our show notes and all of our past episodes. And don't forget to sign up for the mailing list when you get that pop-up, and don't just dismiss it like Amos.
Sorry.
You're not sorry.
I'm always sorry, John.
Thanks for listening, and keep living this Agile life.
This Agile Life is brought to you by a community of Agile developers and coaches aspiring to spread the word about this groundbreaking approach to software development. Join us at thisagilelife.com/community.